I'm now going to do a presentation on Caribou Software's new log scaling software on a Trimble Android Ranger. Let's face it, it's time to move on from Windows Mobile 6. It's time to move on from tractor-fed Oki data printers, and it's time to move on from modems. We have great technology out there. We have the Android operating system. We have handhelds with full keyboards, and we all know scalers love a real keyboard. We have laser printers. We have sharing technology. We have email. We have Dropbox. We have data transfers via the internet and through web servers. And Trimble's Ranger TSC5. It has a bigger screen and is faster than the Juniper Allegro. It has 12 function keys. It has a full numeric keypad. It has a full alphanumeric keyboard. Our software consists of three main parts. The first part is an office system where you manage your codes and lists, such as those for species, grades, and contracts. These lists are then sent down to the handhelds and are used by the scalers to do all of their log scaling. Once the scalers are complete with their logs and loads, that data is then sent back up to the Office data system through the internet and can be used for doing all of your data analysis and reporting. Here is the main log entry screen on the handheld. On the top, we have fields for species, length, diameters, substandard length, condition, and tag. In the middle, we have fields for product, grade, defects, each by segment, and at the bottom, we have other log information such as quality, sort, and deck. I now want to show a short movie on how to enter logs for the west side. The first log we enter is a dug for 32 feet. We're going to put a tag on this log, and then the tags will be incremented as we enter more logs. This log has no defect. We move to our second log. Again, a dug fir. This log, though, has a 1 foot length deduction. We move to our third log, another dug fir. This log is going to have a 2-inch diameter deduction. We move to our fourth log, and on the fourth log, we're going to have both a length deduction and a diameter deduction. We go to our fifth log, which is going to be a substandard log. It has a 4-inch top, but it needs a 5-inch top in order to match the contract minimum. We now move to our next log. It's going to be 48 feet, which makes it a 2-segment log, and we're going to put deductions on both segments. We're now going to switch the species to Western hemlock. We put in our first log, no defect. We add another hemlock log. This time we're going to put on a defect. It's going to be a length defect of 1. We go to our next log, another 24-footer. And here we put on both a length and a diameter deduction. Our 10th log we enter, we're going to put a diameter deduction of 6, which is going to make it a cull log because it has a deduction of 100%. Our last log is going to be a ponderosa pine. This one's going to be 96 feet. That makes it a 3-segment log. And on each segment, we're going to put a deduction. And that is how you enter logs on the west side. I now want to show how to do log entry on the east side. The first thing I want to show is how to do a different deduction. In this case, I want to show a pi deduction of 25%. Our next log, I want to show how we do a square deduction. In this case, we bring up our deduction screen. We pick our dimensions of 6, 6, and 8, and the 1 inch in the calculation is added automatically. Our next log I want to show is we're going to add a condition code for excessive sweep. We go to our field there, we pick up our list, and we pick the code for excessive sweep. Our next log we're going to enter here is a substandard log. It's going to have a 4-inch top, but we need to give it a 5-inch top in order to meet the contract minimum. Now I'm going to switch species here. I'm going to switch from Doug fir. We're going to bring up our pick list. We're going to filter by pine. We're going to pick ponderosa pine. Of course, I could have just entered 7 in the entry box there. It's going to be 32 feet, 2-segment log. In this case, we needed to give a butt diameter of 14. Enter another log. This one's 11 inches, but it's a butt log indicated by an X. Add another log, ponderosa pine, butt log. Here we're going to add a deduction of 1 for length. Another ponderosa pine, 32 feet. Here we're going to add deductions for length, for diameter on the first segment, and a diameter deduction on the second segment. Our next log, we're going to enter here. Here we're going to go down and add a quality code for mechanical damage. We're also going to switch the deck from D2 to D5. We're also going to add a remark here called JJ. We move to our next log, which is 40 feet. It's a butt log. Moving on to our next log, this is going to be 48 feet, 16-inch top, 20-inch butt. It's a 3-segment log. Save that, go to our next log, another 48-footer, 16-inch top, 17-inch butt. This one we're going to add deductions, 1 for length, 2 for diameter on the second segment, and 1 for length on the third segment. We now go ahead and save that, and that's how you enter logs on the east side. I now want to turn to how to enter logs for both the west side and the east side at the same time. The first log I enter is a Doug fir 16 feet 10 inches. If the dimensions are the same, they carry over from the west side to the east. I then enter log number 2. Again, 16 feet 10 inches on the west, but on the east, I change the top diameter to be 11. I go to my third log. This is going to be 20 feet 12 inches. On this one, I'm going to put a 2-foot length deduction. I enter it on the west side. I go to the east side and do the same deduction. I then go and enter my next log, 20 foot 13 inches. And on this one, I'm going to put a 1-inch diameter deduction here on the west. I go to the east and do the same thing. Go and enter my next log, 16 feet 12 inches. Do that on the west. We now turn to the east side, and on the east side, we're going to add a square deduction. I go to the east side deduction screen. I pick square deduction. I enter dimensions of 6, 6, and 8. The program automatically will add 1 inch to the width and the height in the calculation. I go ahead and save that. We move on to our next log. For this log, we're going to switch the species from Doug fir. We're going to switch it to ponderosa pine. We bring up our selection list. We filter by pine. Find ponderosa pine, number 7. Put in the length of 32, diameter of 14 inches. Move to the east side. On the east, we have to add a second diameter. Here we put in 16 inches as the butt diameter. Go to our next log, 32 feet, 11 inches on the west. On the east, though, we change the length to being 33 feet, the diameter to 12, and we make it a butt log as indicated by an X. Go to our next log, 32 feet, 12 inches, and we're going to put on a 2-foot length deduction on the west side. We go to the east side. 3212, we also put in a butt diameter of 16. We then put our 2-foot length deduction in. Go to our next log, 32 feet, 12 inches on the west. Here we're going to put in a 1-inch diameter deduction. We turn to the east. We do the same thing. This is a butt log indicated by an X. Put in our diameter deduction. We also put on a length deduction. Go to our next log. This is going to be 48 feet, so that's a 2-segment log on the west, 3 on the east. We now drop down and add a 1-foot length deduction on the first segment and a 2-inch diameter deduction on the second segment. We then flip over to the east side. The dimensions are the same, but we need to add a butt diameter. We enter 17 inches as the butt diameter. We then go and enter our deductions. 1-foot length deduction on the first segment, 1 foot on the second segment, and 2 inches diameter on the third segment. And that, my friends, is how you enter logs on the west side and the east side at the same time. Once you have finished entering your logs for a load, you can click on the log list that will bring up a review list of all the logs that you have entered for the load. In this list, we'll see all of our logs in order, and we'll see in red some of the corrections that we'll need to make. In the list here, we see that we have a couple of errors for missing a top diameter, sometimes missing a butt diameter, and sometimes missing a length. In this list, we can scroll up and down and correct any of the errors that we may have uncovered. We can also resort the list from last to first log, or we can resort it back first to last. We can also click on F3 that will filter the logs for just the errors. See, we just have our errors listed here. And then by unclicking F3, we bring back the whole list. Now, if we want to fix a log, say log number 4, we key the number in there, click the F2 button. That will bring us up to our log entry screen. We can then add the top diameter here, hit F1 to save, and that log will now be fixed. We can then go to the next log, say log number 10. We click on F2. It brings up that log for edit. We can then put in the top diameter there. I click F1 to save my log, which returns me to my log list. I can then work through the rest of the errors until I have a completely clean set of logs. Now that I've completed scaling my load, I can kick back and have a beer. Or I can print a PDF report of all the logs that I've scaled. From the review screen, I click F1 and I can run a report in either detail or summary mode. I go ahead and run it in detail mode. System cranks away. We'll go load up a PDF of all of the logs. This is the PDF, showing all of the detail for all the logs in the segments, including the species, grade, condition, board footage. It also includes a summary at the bottom that shows all the detail, species, and grade combinations. Scroll up and down. This PDF we can obviously print to a laser printer, or we can share it via Dropbox, via email. You can practically do whatever you need to do with the PDF. The next thing I want to turn to is the audit log. In the system, once you're done with the load, you can lock it down by posting it. When we post a load, this means that there'll be no corrections allowed to any of the logs on the log list. As you can see here, when we bring up our log list, it's marked as no edits are allowed, and the buttons are all disabled. But let's say we actually do need to go back and make some changes. You can still go ahead and do that, but what that involves is going back into the load and unposting it. So we go to our load, we click the unpost button, and that unlocks the load so that we can go make some edits. So let's just say we go ahead and make a few edits. In the system, we keep a record of what those edits are, and that's called our auto log. We can go to load again, and at the bottom there's a report that we can run. That's our auto log that shows all of the changes that you would have made to this unposted load. We can see here that we've got changes for diameters, deductions, what have you. I now want to switch gears and talk a little bit about our back office system. This is a Windows desktop application in which you can manage all of your lists for your codes for species, grades, sorts, decks, contracts, and the like. What I've got here on the screen here is our list for grades. Note that I can set up my grades by species, by minimum and maximum top diameter, by minimum and maximum length, and by minimum net volume. These lists are all managed on the desktop and then replicated down to the handhelds over the internet. Likewise, when the log scalers are done scaling all the loads and logs, they're sent up via the internet to a SQL Server database in the back office system. Then, in the back office system, you can generate grid reports which are easily exportable to Excel. You can also hook in reporting tools such as Crystal Reports and Pivot Reports. Basically, once the data are in the SQL Server database, you can slice and dice the data any way you need to meet your business requirements. I'd now like to wrap up. Why choose Caribou Software? We have over 20 years of forestry experience working with mills, timber dealers, and logging contractors. We have over 300 customers in North America. We're a real software company. We have 8 full-time staff with over 3 years of work experience who have outstanding customer support. We will pick up the phone. And we loved the opportunity to work with you to meet your log scaling needs. Thank you.